burden, infrastructure and competitiveness gaps that have even widened of late, and also we'll try to also look at how coastal wealth can be transformed into real national dividends. Joining me tonight is Caleb Danladi, a maritime policy expert and the founder of the Caleb Danladi Foundation, to help us unpack what must be done to reposition Nigeria's maritime sector for growth and resilience. We'll take a short break now, and when we return, the conversations begin. Please stay with us. Welcome back. Well, with me in the studio right now is the person of Captain Caleb Danladi. It's a delight to have you join us on Korero, Captain Caleb.
It's my pleasure and very good evening. I'm happy to New Year to you.
Oh, forgive me for not even saying once again Happy New Year. Well, it's a new year indeed. But let's even delve and dive into the conversation right away. First, last year, we did magnificently well within the maritime sector. Of course, everybody will say the Nigerian maritime sector is right now receiving the attention that it requires. But then, other countries that don't have the kind of resources that we have in Nigeria bank on the maritime space or the marine space to be able to even fund their budget. But in this country, in Nigeria, we turn a blind eye on the maritime sector because it has not been able to generate enough funding for us to even fund the budget based on the practicality of all of this. But then help us understand, are we missing something in terms of fund generation and revenue generation even from the maritime sector?
Okay, you have asked a very important question regarding the revenue generated by Nigerian ports. And I can categorically take you back to our port system in Nigeria. There's a historical development of ports in Nigeria and how ports have emerged over time. However, I will leave it for a later conversation. But we are discussing about revenue generation. I think Nigerian port system have done well when it comes to revenue generation, even though there has been some issues that has to do with infrastructural deficits, congestion, multiplicity of government agencies, which we know has always been a challenge, which the government are working to address those challenges now. If you look at Nigerian ports, more than 70% of import and export and more than 80% volume of seaborne trade is being imported through the port system. That simply means Nigerian port is the drivers of the entire economy. Why do I say so? The infrastructural equipment we are enjoying today, the heavy lift trucks, the clothes we are wearing today, and the cars we drive today, without the port, it's impossible for us to enjoy those benefits. That's a very important aspect of port. So when we talk about the benefits of port, we have the direct benefits, the indirect benefits, and also the induced benefit. So let's look at the direct benefits. One of the aspects of direct benefit is it generates to the revenue and GDP of the country. Like I mentioned, 80% of imports and export is being through the ports. So it means that we are generating revenue. You can't compare us with nations like Singapore, who are solely maritime nations, and they depend solely on seagoing activities. If you look at the crude we are exporting today, it's also through the crude oil terminals. What you are discussing, you are talking about only the container ports. You're forgetting that we also have oil terminals, where most of the revenue is also being generated because we are exporting crude oil to the oil terminals. Then let's look at the second aspect. It has to do with job creation, which is very, very important. The port system today employs thousands of people, whether directly or indirectly. And when they employ thousands of people, those people earn salary. And when those people earn salary, they contribute to the economy of the country because they spend their salary in the country and they contribute to the purchasing power. And by employing people, you are reducing unemployment. And now you are contributing to the GDP of the country, and you are reducing the unemployment. Let's also look at some issues like ship registration. Ship registration also generates revenue to the government, which is very important. Let's look at other aspects. If a port is situated in Lagos now, you have a lot of industries in Lagos that will take advantage of those ports. We are looking at the indirect impact of ports. Now, it supports industrialization. For instance, now, if you have port, let's say in Port Harcourt, you have heavy steel industries that are situated close by because it enabled them to import and export just in time, which is very important. You also look at if there's a port in Lagos, there's going to be a lot of businesses that have to do with ship agencies. There will be a lot of business that have to do with bunkering operations, because when ships come in and out of port, they need to bunker. Bunker simply means the fuel that the ship needs to maintain its proportion, which is important. Let's also look at the induced impact now. The induced impact has to do with, for instance, because there's a port in Lagos, a truck driver in Kaduna will gain employment because he's going to transport containers from Lagos to Kaduna. That's an induced impact. And for instance, workers that are being employed in Lagos port today, they are going to stimulate the real estate business. Why do I say so? They will need accommodation, they need housing, schools for their children, and that's an induced impact because it's going to stimulate the education sector, it's going to stimulate the real estate sector, it's also going to stimulate the market sector. So the economic benefits of ports is huge and enormous.
Interesting. But then, for this year, the federal government have allocated about 10.4 billion naira for the Ministry of Marine and Blue Economy. This is not the first time that this sector is receiving such funds. But then, we begin to ask, in practical terms, have the sector been able to generate enough funds to even sustain the Nigerian budget, since the government is trying to even diversify? Can we say that the maritime sector has been able to live up to its responsibility, being a revenue generating platform for us as a people in practical terms?
Like I said, we have been able to generate revenue, but for us to generate revenue that will be able to fund the budget, you imagine how many ports we have in the country. We only have 4 ports, right? We have the Apapa port in Lagos, we have the Tinkan Island port, we also have the Port Harcourt port, we have the Rivers port, we have the Warri ports. We have few ports. So you can't expect these few ports to generate revenue that is going to fund the budget of over 200 million Nigerians. However, the maritime sector have done a lot when it comes to generation of revenue, which I've mentioned in the last question you asked me. However, it's very important for us to also look at the Ministry of Blue Economy. Before now, in the last administration and previous administrations, we have always had what we call the Ministry of Transport, whereas the Maritime Department is just a sub-unit under the Ministry of Transport, meaning that we don't have a dedicated ministry. So this is the first time in the history that we have a dedicated Ministry of Marine and Blue Economy separated from the Ministry of Transport, which is a good step in the right direction. And what does it mean? It means that we have a lot of untapped potentials when it comes to marine and blue economy. And then you can see there's a political will from the government to harness into this potential. That's why they have developed what we call a 10-year plan on the marine and blue economy policy, the national policy of marine and blue economy, which will enable the country to tap into all these untapped potentials. We have over 853 kilometers of coastlines, and we have over 10,000 navigable waters. So it's very important. If you look at the policies, they have different sections. They are going to develop the inland waterways. They are going to modernize the port infrastructure. Why? Because they identified that there have been challenges when it comes to port infrastructure that leads to congestion. So now they have allocated funds to modernize the port, which is very, very good and crucial. There have also been efforts to train seafarers, because seafarers move these ships from point A to point B. So that globally today we have shortage of seafarers, which is important because we are training seafarers to meet up with these shortages, which is crucial. Another aspect that we have to look into the Ministry of Marine and Blue Economy is they have shown the political will. That is why, if you look at the election of Nigeria into Category C of International Maritime Organization, is a huge step and it's a huge blessing. What does that mean, a huge blessing? Because we are going to sit at a table where decision will be made at the highest decision-making body of maritime activities in the world. We are going to contribute when it comes to marine legislation. We are going to contribute when there's any amendment to treaties. We are going to contribute when there's any crucial decision that have to do with marine and blue economy. So you can see a lot of changes have been made. We have been trying to get into this council for the past 14 years. But with the right people in place now, with the right policies in place, I think we are getting there. Let me take you back to the Deep Blue project that was implemented by Nigerian government. And you can see we have yielded significant results. In the last 4 years, they have a 0 case of piracy, which is very important. What does that mean? It means that investors will have confidence in the country. It means that the insurance premium will go down. It means that there's going to be ease of doing business because people will not be afraid to send their ship in and out, which is important.
Well, I can't agree less with you on that because we've had about 33,000 calls just in 2025 alone. But then there is a particular concern which the maritime policy has even not been able to capture, and that is the concern around the whole coastal tourism and renewable energy. We realize that the Nigerian maritime and blue economy is trying to shy away from having a conversation around the coastal tourism and also renewable energy. At this point, as a professional in the field, I'm curious, is it that we are not matured enough as a country, as a people, to be able to generate revenue from coastal tourism, and are we scared of even venturing into renewable energy in order to make ends meet and ensure that we create some form of diversification for the Nigerian economy?
Okay, so if you look at the National Policy on Marine and Blue Economy that was approved in 2025, last year, by the Federal Executive Council, the idea for this policy is to harness into the untapped potentials of marine and blue economy. And the federal government acknowledged that there are a lot of untapped potentials that ranges from coastal tourism, fisheries, and food security. You also have to talk of offshore wind power.
A lot of people have said that is an audio policy, by the way.
It's not an audio policy because it has just been launched.
All right.
And it's a 10 years roadmap. For you to say it's an audio policy, you have to wait until after 10 years. And if nothing is being done, then you call it an audio policy. Because when a policy is being launched and the government has shown a political will and the government has been elected into the highest decision-making body of International Maritime Organization, you should know that there is so much seriousness when it comes to that. That being said, if you look at the policy is going to address the issue of coastal tourism. It's going to address the issue of offshore wind power and renewable energy, which is very, very important. So since the policy has just been launched, you know it takes time for it to be implemented. It has to go through certain processes. It's not a private venture, it's a government venture. So it's going to go through. I strongly believe that with this national policy on marine and blue economy that have a 10-year roadmap, I strongly believe in the next 5 to 6 years, we are going to see a renewable focus when it comes to coastal tourism and then offshore wind power and renewable energy.
Interesting. Let's talk about the Merchant Shipping Act of 2007 and also the Cabotage Act of 2003. Not even forgetting the SPOMO, which Act of 2019. All of these acts, beautiful as they are, have they lived up to their responsibilities?
Okay, you have asked a very good question. So I'm going to take you back to maritime legislation and policies, which is important for you to know. First, you mentioned about the Merchant Shipping Act of 2007, which was initially adopted in 1962.
Yeah.
Yes, the Merchant Shipping Act is the backbone of shipping. It talks about maritime safety. It talks about seafaring. It talks about ship registration. it talks about maritime security. If you look at the Merchant Shipping Act today, it has been able to live up to expectation. Why do I say? Let's take, for instance, maritime security. In the last 4 years, we have recorded 0 cases of piracy. That is a huge step. But there has not been any case of piracy, which is very important. If you look at the maritime safety in this aspect means something different, and I'm going to take you to my next legislation. It means that all vessels that are flying Nigerian flags and all foreign vessels that are visiting Nigeria must comply with the requirement of International Maritime Organization. Simply means that the vessel must comply with the minimum safety requirement are required by SOLAS. So those requirements include that the vessel must be constructed as required by SOLAS, the vessel must carry sufficient number of life rafts, the vessel must carry sufficient number of life jackets, the vessel must carry sufficient number of approved radio equipment, the navigation standard. There are all sort of equipment. Everything the vessel is built as per standards of SOLAS, safety of life at sea. And you can see there has been a lot of compliance, and there has also been a lot of detention, meaning that the act is working, because if a vessel visits Nigerian ports and they don't comply, what will happen? The vessel is going to be detained until all those remedies have been fixed, which is very important. Let's also look at the ship registration. Today, if you look at the Nigerian coastal waters, there are a lot of ships that are flying Nigerian flags, which shows that the act is working. Let's also look at the seafaring. We have a lot of Nigerian seafarers today. I'm also a Nigerian seafarer, even though I carry UK certification, but I'm a Nigerian seafarer. I work on a Nigerian vessel in the past, so which is important. Now, let's look at the next act, which is called the Cabotage Act of 2003. Yeah. The Cabotage Act of 2003, that is the Coastal and Inland Shipping Act, that says that the vessel must be owned by Nigerian, it must be crewed by Nigerian, must be built by Nigerian. And the idea is to promote indigenous participation in shipping and to grow local content, which is very, very good. And part of the Cabotage Act talks about vessel cabotage financing fund, which, if you go through the news, it has just been approved and is on the...
That's the CVFF, yeah.
Yes, they are going to disburse it to people who have the potential to buy a vessel, that's the ship owners, which is very important. What does that mean? It means that we are going to have additional fleet into the country. Mind you, sometimes we have old fleet, we have insufficient fleet. That is why you have to have some waivers. Even under the Cabotage Act, there are waivers where if you don't have sufficient number of fleet, you have waivers where foreign vessels can also participate, which is important that we have the cabotage vessel financing fund, which is going to be disposed to ship owners, which is important. What does that mean? It means that when these ship owners acquire their ships, the vessel is going to be crewed by Nigeria, meaning that you are reducing unemployment. All right? Now, the seafarers themselves are going to spend their money in Nigeria. You are contributing to the economy. Now, the ship owners themselves are going to lift crude and also local content that belongs to Nigeria. So you are still bringing back the funds to Nigerian economy, which is very important. So if you look at the Cabotage Act, if you tell me, oh, in the past 20, 30 years, have you been able to live up to expectation? I would say 50-50. The reason because we don't have sufficient fleet. That is why the fund has been disbursed for ship owners.
But this is not the first time these funds are.
Well, but they are disbursing it after 20 years.
Coastal and Inland Shipping Act of 2003.
Yes.
You know, it's backdated, but then the reenacted one of 2003. It's not the first time that funds.
The first one you have to talk about the one we borrowed from the Jones Act of US.
Before, prior to this time, I'm even curious. Prior to this time, it's not the first time funds are being even disbursed.
But prior to this, we have what we call the Nigerian National Shipping Line.
Yes.
After that, we don't have the Nigerian National Shipping Line today.
But looking at this, when we are not able to account for the Nigerian shipping lines,
Nigerian National Shipping Lines,
national shipping lines, we have not been able to bring some persons to the book to even say, okay, let's even account for this. Now
that is a conversation for another day.
We are talking about talking about cabotage.
Yes. So that's why I'm taking
and the funds will be disbursed sometime this year.
Definitely.
Now,
And you have to wait. Let's see.
I'm curious again. Yes. Is this the right step in the right direction?
Definitely.
Have the Cabotage Act of 2003 been able to live up?
That is what I was trying to explain.
Oh, please go ahead. Yeah. Sorry for interjecting.
Yeah, well, I told you, like, for the past 20 years, this is the first time they are going to disburse these funds for indigenous ship owners.
Shouldn't you be afraid? That might
no, because these people are in the business.
The shipping line.
They understand the business. We have ship owners.
If the Nigerian shipping line.
But you are talking about private individuals.
Yes.
Yes. They are
private individuals that we cannot guarantee.
But we have private ship owners in Nigeria.
We cannot hold them responsible.
We have private ship owners in Nigeria that have been able to live up to expectation. So you need to give them benefit of doubt. Any business, there is risks. In any business, even today, if I'm going to disburse Uber to different drivers, there's risks. You think that some of them will not live up to expectation, then you give them benefit of doubt. There are documents that will be signed. There are legal documents that will be signed. There are business plans that you need to submit. So you don't just disburse funds to somebody who doesn't even know how to run ships. These are ship owners that will be able to run ships. So you need to give them benefit of doubt. There are risks, yes, definitely, and see if they don't perform. It's very important for you to give people benefit of doubt. Okay, now let's go to the next legislation, which is the port reform, but the port concession of 2006. Before 2006, there has been issues in the country. Nigerian ports was the most expensive ports in the world. It takes months to load a ship. It takes weeks sometimes for ship to wait. The average waiting time was too long. There are so many multiple government agencies in port. And what the Nigerian government say, oh, there was a study that was conducted by the Royal Haskell. So when the study was conducted, they identified the challenges, they identified the problems. And then at that point, they came up with the act whereby they concession the ports to private terminal operators. That is what we have, what we call the landlord port administrative model today. The landlord port administrative model means that the private terminal operators will carry out the port operation, whereas the government will oversee. And after the port reform, we have seen, an improvement in the port performance. We have seen an improvement in port efficiency. The average waiting times of ships reduces as against what it used to be before the port concession. So it's very important. However, even though with the port concessions, there are still some delay and some lapses which the government is trying to address at the moment through the port modernization, which is important. Now, let me also take you back to some acts now. The international act that Nigeria has been part of it. One of those most important acts is SOLAS, 1974, International Convention for the Safety of Life at Sea. SOLAS was adopted following the sinking of the Titanic. So, what does that mean? It means that there must be a standard for the construction and operation of ships. And Nigeria has been part of that. That is why today, the NIMASA is an enforcing arm of government and the port state control. They ensure that every ship calling to Nigerian ports must comply with SOLAS regulation. You can't just come to Nigerian port and you don't have lifeboat. So that when the vessel is at sea and there's emergency, there's nowhere for the people to escape.
Well,
no, I'm taking you through the convention.
I'm particularly concerned. You're taking us a bit into the maritime studies.
Well, that's the policies. We are talking about policies.
I'm particularly concerned. We've talked about the cabotage.
Of course. I'm
concerned about the SPAMO, which is the suppression of piracy and other maritime offences.
Yes.
Which is an act that was signed by 2019.
Exactly.
In Nigeria. Now,
it's part of the Deep Blue project.
It's a part of the Deep Blue project.
Exactly.
But then in Nigeria,
yes,
there's been this concern that SPAMO has been operating on the surface. That when it has to do with piracy and the confrontation and the eviction of piracy from the Nigerian waterways, it has been on the surface. That all the records that we've seen so far doesn't reflect what happens even on rural waters. But then, how correct is this assertion?
I totally disagree with it. In my own opinion, if you can go through the International Maritime Bureau, which is the Global Piracy Reporting Centers, right? they have the accurate data, and the data say there has not been a single piracy incident.
So this
You have to work on facts.
Does this data capture the people living in remote in creeks in the riverine areas?
Was a merchant vessel attacked in creek?
Well,
you have to understand.
we've
understand about
not been able to.
That's why I was trying to take you to different conventions. I would have taken you up to UNCLOS, United Nations Convention on the Laws of the Seas, that gives right for innocent passage, economic exclusive zone.
Is it possible for a vessel to be attacked and not recorded?
Well, for me, if a vessel is attacked under the international safety of life at sea, SOLAS, and also the ISPS code, they have a means of reporting. They have the shipboard security plan. They have the purple finder where you activate when there is any emergency. So it's not possible, because the ship is being managed by a shipping company. It's not being managed by just a sole somebody in the garage. Shipping is not like that. It's not like motor park, right? Shipping is organized, is well structured, so that when something happened today, it's being reported. It's very important for you to know you are in somebody's territorial water, and when you are being attacked, how will you not report it? You are being attacked, you will look for help. The moment piracy attacks come, there's a mayday that has been, is being broadcasted via the VHF radio, and the ship security alert plan is being activated. So it's not possible, except that ship is being operated by people who also don't know shipping. As far as shipping is concerned, for you to be a shipboard security officer, there are levels of certification you must attain, and the ship itself must also have a certification for it to operate, which is being issued by the port state control, and also the company themselves must also have the certification. The company themselves must have a company security officer, the ship themselves must have a shipboard security officer, and there's a ship security plan there. So it's very important for you to know that the merchant shipping is well structured, and it's not like motor park or garage.
All right, so we're talking about shipping in this case, but then we also have other vessels that also move on the waters. People call them locally flying boats, and the local canoes that we have. And most of these operators within the maritime space have experienced some form of piracy attacks.
Have they reported it?
Well, in such a scenario, can we outrightly rule out the possibility of unreported piracy in Nigeria for the last couple of years? To give Nigerian a clean sheet to say for the last 4 years, there have never been a case of piracy.
The data is there, right? The facts are there. If the data is wrong, people will come and protest and say the data is wrong, but nobody. So for me, the data is accurate, because that's what's being reported. The International Maritime Bureau verified their information. If you go to NIMASA today, you can verify that information. There has not been a single piracy case. If you go to Nigerian territorial waters, there are a lot of intelligence gathering. There are a lot of patrol boats, military patrol boats. They are patrolling. So it's very important for you to know that the data that was reported is accurate, because there is integrity.
That's quite interesting. But then let's return back to the ports in general. Tinkan Port has been one very interesting port. But then, what we use for the last 4 decades, we use other ports in Lome and other parts of the world to even do a comparative analysis of the Tinkan Port in terms of infrastructure. Can we say that Nigerian ports have been able to also be attended to infrastructurally wise?
Well, like I mentioned earlier, there have been challenges in Nigerian port, and if you look at it today, there are challenges ranging.
No, try to use even Tinkan Port, because I know that the rural port and the Apapa Port are a bit are receiving some form of attention, but Tinkan Port, then, which is very, very.
Tinkan Port is also
receiving
a port. There are a
attention.
lot of vessels called on Tinkan Port, right? Most of the rural vessels go to Tinkan Port. That's the rural, I mean the vessels that convey cars.
Yes.
And we have a high number of importation and importation of cars to the country, and export of empty containers and some foodstuffs. Very important for you to know. there has been issues, and the issue is some of the equipment are old and obsolete, right? Which makes loading operations a bit slow. However, the government have invested large sum of money for port modernization, which I've mentioned, which I think the port modernization will commence this year because I'm not part of it. I just read it over the news, which I believe is going to happen. It's on the tendering processes and what so on, which is important. But the most important thing is the government has shown a political will to modernize our port. Now, a lot of people are shifting towards deep sea port. And in Nigeria today, we have a deep sea port, right? We have the Lekki deep sea port, whereas vessel with deep draft can call to
propose Lekki deep sea.
No, it's not proposed. It's working. It's working.
But
ships are calling.
It's not.
I have friends that are pilots.
It's not fully operational. Even the Calabar deep sea port.
No, Lekki. I disagree with you. Lekki deep sea port has been commissioned.
Yeah.
And vessels are calling in and out of Lekki deep sea port on a daily basis. Lekki deep sea port is fully operational.
Right. I stand corrected.
What do you mean that there are issues like the Ibaka deep sea port, which are the proposed deep sea port, and the Badagry deep sea port, which are proposed deep sea ports? Well, it's on the proposal stage, and then they will definitely be constructed in the near future. However, the Lekki deep sea port is fully operational, and mind you, the Lome port you are talking about mostly deep sea ports as well. So if you look at now, globally there has been shift in focus from the conventional ports to deep sea ports. Why? Because the world is changing. The vessels are building, they are large vessels that have deep draft. So for you to move containers on economic of scale, you need large vessels. And then which ports can accommodate most of those large vessels? They are the deep sea ports. That's why the focus has been on deep sea port nowadays. And the deep sea port, if you look at, you bring in large vessels, the turnaround time is quick. And they are always efficient. So you look at the service quality and the efficiency of ports, which facilitate trade. We talk about trade facilitation. What happens is going to lower the freight rate.
Well, when we still have infrastructural decadence.
But I mentioned that
we still have infrastructural decadence.
The government has allocated funds for investment.
Captain, I'm particularly concerned because this is not the first time. Nigerians will call it an audio.
Of course,
Nigerians will call it an audio.
I did not shy away from the truth. There have been issue of infrastructure. I mentioned
audio infrastructure because we've seen the government.
We've seen the government propose. I don't understand what you mean by audio. Can you
I will clarify what we mean by audio?
Yes.
Audio simply means that in the Gen Z language, that we only hear about it here, but you never see them come into fruition.
But this one is different because funds have been allocated.
5 billion.
Funds have been allocated.
We've seen the budget right now. We've also seen
this is the first time.
We've seen this is not the first time the government is making promises of this magnitude.
This is the first time we're having.
But this is not. You agree with me that this is not the first time. This is not the first time we're having. Ministry of Transportation. This Ministry of Transportation.
But it deals with transport.
But the Ministry of Transportation has been able to look at all of these concerns and have not been able to address this concern for the last 4 decades. How can Nigerians go and sleep right now knowing fully well that this is practical and this is obtainable?
Well, like I mentioned earlier, that this is the first time we are having a dedicated ministry called Ministry of Marine and Blue Economy.
But the funds is not the first time.
This is the first time.
It's not the first time funds have been
a 10-year. This is the first time we're having.
We've had roadmaps before now.
Well, I disagree with you. This is the first time we have a national policy on marine and blue economy. We never had that policy before. This is the first time. Do your research well. This is the first time we are having a national policy on marine and blue economy that have a 10-year roadmap to address most of these issues and to harness into the potentials of the blue economy. Like I mentioned earlier, the Nigerian is strategically located along the Gulf of Guinea, and we have a coastline of over 853 kilometers and over 10,000 navigable waters, meaning that there's a huge potential. And now the government, the federal government last year approved a huge sum of money for port modernization. If it has not been approved last year and is undergoing tendering process, you can't call that audio funds or whatever you mentioned. For me, you give them benefit of doubt and see if after 2 years investment has not been made on port infrastructure, then you can give whatever name. But however, you can see it's transparent. they have come out to say, oh, we are investing such amount of money on port modernization and is undergoing tendering processes. And then definitely port modernization is not something that takes place in a day. It's not something like painting or whatever it is. It's something that you need to acquire this equipment. You need to move them on heavy lift ships. It takes time. You need to come and install them. You need to carry out environmental impact assessment. You need to carry out a lot of assessment to do that. So it's very important for you to know. But for people that are saying audio, no, it's just like today. If I promise I'm going to pay my child's school fees in February and suddenly somebody say no, it's an audio promises, how will you feel? You won't feel good. Definitely, there has been issues, there has been challenges in the past, but changes. This is the first time we're having a national policy on marine and blue economy, so let's give them benefit of doubt to see if the policy will work or not. But in my own opinion, with what I've read, I strongly believe that the policy is going to address a lot of issues and a lot of deficiencies and shortcomings that we have been having.
Well, Captain Caleb, I know you're not the mouthpiece of the government, and you're not holding brief for the government, but you tend to be very positive.
My research was
about the 10 years blueprint by the government when it has to do with the maritime policy. But Nigerians, again, will even want to ask at this point in time, looking at the old 10 years plan, proposed plan, actions, and even a policy by the government, or programs by the government in looking at the maritime sector. One thing seems to be very, very odd in the 10 years plan, and that is the fact that the issues around coastal tourism tend to be very strange with the government and with the whole policy. I'm curious, could this be as a result of insecurity, or could this be an oversight, or could this be that the government just don't want to focus on coastal tourism for now? Let help us understand why this seems very odd to us.
Well, I'm not part of those who drafted the 10-year plan. But if you go through the 10-year plan, there's a section that deals with coastal tourism.
Yeah, it's very
Exactly.
it's silent.
No, you have to go deep.
On coastal
Maybe
tourism.
you go through preamble.
Yeah,
you have to go deep into
I've done the studies on the preamble.
Yes, then you have to go deep into the document. You have to go deep into the document. You have gone through the preamble, then you have to go deep into the document to now see, okay, if we are going to invest X, Y, Z, where are the areas that have been identified? How are we going to implement them? What are the need assessment? How are we going to achieve this? It's all in the document.
Coastal policy.
So you can just,
coastal tourism is not something that we should be even be having in the preamble, knowing fully whether Nigeria.
No, we have a preamble that
I'm particularly concerned because tourism all over the world. You've cited Singapore, which is known for its marine revenue generation. It is one of the source of revenue for the good people of Singapore. Now, Nigeria has a lot of waterways. We have a lot of sightseeing, even around coastal areas in the country. Take a trip to Bayelsa, to Port Harcourt, to Akwa Ibom, Ondo State, and also looking at Lagos State in general. You see a lot of beautiful places to even want to even explore. Now, one would have been thinking at this point that the old blueprints would have seen coastal tourism as the future of Nigeria in terms of its waterways, to replace even the crude that we are currently even looking at. But then it is a bit silent on the whole coastal tourism. You are a professional. Could there be a reason why we are trying to even put coastal tourism as part of the preamble and part of the document? Meanwhile, it is something that should be enforceable almost like yesterday.
Okay, first of all, when we talk about when you have a thesis, you have to go through.
Yeah.
You go to table of content, and that is why I mean, you probably had a snap check of the national policy on marine and blue economy. Because what I mean by preamble, it means that the front
No,
page.
I've gone in depth. I've seen some
so
of
you
the
have
places that
gone
have been
in
captured.
depth for
Yes.
the document,
Yes.
and you have read.
Yes.
And then they want to harness into the coastal tourism, right? So what else do you want them to do? Since they want to harness into the coastal tourism, this is the first time the Nigerian government want to harness into the potentials of the marine and blue economy. So you need also to give them the benefit of doubt to see if it's not being done or not. The roadmap is there. The 10-year plan.
Should we be having a roadmap on coastal tourism?
Let me give you an
we
example.
know that the country is surrounded largely by water, and this is something that is enforceable even here and now. It is as good as being even done yesterday. Shouldn't it be a priority for us as a country, other than putting it in the whole policy framework of the government?
Okay, I'm not a coastal expert.
Yes.
Right? I'm a shipping expert.
All right.
And those questions you can direct it to a coastal expert, which is very important. I think they will be in the best place to answer you. All I need is we're discussing about the blue economy and we discuss about harnessing blue economy. But when it comes to coastal tourism, I didn't study anything on coastal tourism. So I don't understand how you are going to identify the challenges of coastal tourism. But let's take, for example, today, you are moving on the coastal road in Lagos. And you can still see the beaches are booming. Right? I know about beaches, I know about everything, but when you ask me questions that are related to ship operations, ship maneuvering, ship handling, cargo operations, I'll be more than happy and maritime policy to explain to you. But you are focused on coastal tourism. I think you need a tourism expert. It's different from a marina. A marina job is different from a coastal tourism.
All right. Well, I think we will have to bring a marina in that case, probably tourist or a tourism expert.
Tourism expert would be the best person.
Understand that particular point of view. But then, as we begin to wrap up,
Yes.
looking at the maritime policy of the government, if fully harnessed in the next 10 years, where do you see Nigeria?
I see Nigeria moving to category B of IMO. I see Nigeria moving to category B of IMO. I see Nigeria being the giant of Africa when it comes to shipping today. And then when we harness into this potential, Nigerian ports are going to be among the top 100 ports in the world that are listed by the Lloyd's list. Definitely. I've seen there. We are already getting there gradually, and we'll get there. There has been the political will from the government. The election of Nigeria into IMO category C says a lot. And there's a lot of compliance when it comes to international regulation, which you didn't allow me to explain further in the earlier
You're taking us through the very detailed.
Well, there are more of them.
You're taking us through a detailed classroom.
To know that
you wanted to just know about the capital and the formal and the rest of that. You took us through a very lengthy lectures, and probably will have to enroll in a maritime class to be able to understand some of those terminology. But at this point, I want to say thank you so much.
Thank you very much,
Captain Caleb Denladi, for finding out time to be with us here on Korero.
Thank you very much for having me.
And once again, Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. Enjoy the rest of your
Well, Nigerians, this is how far we can go tonight on the show. Do not forget that you can join the conversation on our social media handle currently showing on your screen. Should you want to do that, you can follow us across all our social media on Rapid TV. Official Rapid TV on our various social media platform, and of course you can also download the Rapid TV app from your Android and iOS devices to keep track of our broadcast. My name is Godwin Sunday. Always remember that peace and unity are the pathways to progress. Do enjoy the rest of your evening. Bye for now.